Hey everyone, and welcome back to hockeyprospects.com YouTube channel. I'm Jérôme Bérubé, and I'm joined by Brad Allen. And Brad, today for our second video leading up to the NHL Draft, we're going to talk about players that we have ranked that is quite different from, other public lists that we have seen, and we have received some question about some of those players. So we're gonna discuss that today.
It's one way of saying it. A bit of criticism, a bit of backlash. It's, it's good though. It stirs the pot, and to be honest with all of you, it's realistic. I'm telling you, if you saw NHL team lists, there's no consensus, especially this class. This class, there's very little consensus from 1 straight to 10, and if that happens in drafts, that means from 11 to 70, you're dealing with that too. So yeah. That's what I would say about that.
Of course, and like everyone's list looks different, like with NHL teams. So in a public list, sometimes I feel like the list looks a bit too similar, right? So, but we
the herd,
I know,
flock, the sheep, the herd. It's real. It's very real.
So, okay, we'll start with 2 players that we got questioned about why are they not in the first round. So those 2 players are Tynan Lawrence and Alexander Command. So Brad, let's start with Lawrence. Why we have him outside of our first round, and he's ranked pretty much in top 20 everywhere that I've seen. So why let's start the discussion here, but like why is he not in our top 32 based on what we've seen this season?
Well, yeah, to start, I would say that when you stare at our list for the first time, I'd say the most 2 shocking things would be Bjork 1 and Lawrence outside the top 32 would be the other. So this, I understand for everybody listening to this, a lot of you would be very skeptical and be like, what in the heck's going on? How could a player who going into the season was considered very likely a top 5 pick, natural power centers are almost impossible to get in draft, to get outside of drafts. So if you don't draft him, you don't get him if he hits. Yet we are very low on him, and I personally am probably the lowest on our staff about him. So this is the situation. Was last year we never isolated him, but we did get to see him. And he was obviously very impressive in the playoffs with his production, and the goal scoring rates were there. And unfortunately, what can happen is that if we don't isolate, the scoring rates can maybe sometimes get the best of us. So heading into this season, we watched him with the Hlinka. He's still scoring. And he was good at the Hlinka. I would argue that was the only time we really had any time for him was the Hlinka. But it also raised some doubts. Immediately off the hop, there were some doubts. And the main doubt was that he looked to drive possession, but at an unnatural level. You want a prospect to be able to understand when he has to evaluate his passing options. You want a center to make his teammates better, not just through dictating through the middle, but also by being able to find them at the right times. That's where he seemed like he was very much just playing an isolated style. And so we waited to see what he could do in the USHL. USHL comes, and what happens? He gets hurt. So we had to wait it out a little bit before coming back. And I remember we had many discussions. The first USHL viewings, I remember messaging me like, this is a real problem. Like this kid, not only he's scoring still, but every other aspect of his game was completely inherently flawed to me. I find that we just talked about the scoring. There are other bases to, I think, what mask deficiencies in players. And one of the biggest bases is having a motor and skating combination so that he can eat ice, because then it looks like he's actively engaged in making plays when he isn't. That's the case with Lawrence. The foundation of this player is that he has a fantastic motor. He can skate really well, and he scores enough at the USHL level where I think it really masks the deficiencies. Now, the deficiencies off the puck are equal to the on-puck deficiency. So off the puck, this is a player who will try to play defense but doesn't know how, meaning he doesn't anticipate plays in advance. He doesn't understand how to battle effectively along the boards. He will certainly try, but he doesn't outthink opponents. He doesn't outsmart opponents. He simply tries to outpower opponents. I remember in the book, Jerome, one of the NHL scouts quotes we had there, and I totally agree with this NHL scout, even though I didn't think about this during the draft year, was the NHL scouts say it reminds him of Jake Virtanen at the same, and that is so true. Jake Virtanen would simply try to run through players with his toolkit and power combination to try to get things done off the puck, and at times even attempting to, when he's trying to drive possession down the wings or try to fly past a defender, he'll just run through the defender instead of trying to outthink the defender. So both those qualities that Virtanen had absolutely apply to Lawrence here. And in our meetings, I was talking with Mark and you, and I remember telling you guys, they're not the same player. Lawrence has a much higher work rate, but Brad Lambert is a flash and dash winger who we really thought was incredibly overrated, much in the same way we think Lawrence was. We had Lambert in the 30s, or 29 on our final list. I had him in the mid to late 30s, which is a third rounder. And that's the situation with Lawrence essentially now. We have 34, which is about a third round. And it goes back to what Lambert lacked. And that was that Lambert had a brilliant toolkit, one of the best skating toolkits you'll ever see, but the spatial awareness and understanding how to take advantage of that skating was completely misrepresented. He was not good at understanding how to use speed differentials. He was very poor at using the space that was given to him so they could use attack skating and reverse pivot defense and turn them inside out and take advantage of that space. Tynan Lawrence is that in spades. Tynan Lawrence is fast, but he doesn't know why he should be fast. That is, when I talk to NHL team staff, when I've talked to directors of scouting, player development coaches, they always tell me the same thing. It's not so much the speed of the skater they're focused on, it's how smart they are at utilizing that speed. Tynan Lawrence has no concept of how to utilize his speed, much in this way, same way Brad Lambert doesn't. Right? Mm-hmm. The awareness is lacking. The speed differentials aren't there. The understanding how to take over with that skating isn't there. And that's pronounced because of the lack of driving instincts. Do you want to touch on what you think of his skill set, Jerome, and what you saw in college too?
Well, I think one reason we have him, outside of the first round is that, yes, he played center, but we're not convinced he's going to be a center at the NHL level. We think there's probably a better chance he's going to be a winger at the NHL level. Depends. The NHL team that will pick him will do whatever they want with him. But based on what we saw as far as his vision goes, his playmaking, I have a hard time seeing him, play down the middle. I think the public perception that he's a top 6 center, it's not really what we see with him. We see more of as a winger, he doesn't really. He has a bit of a tunnel vision sometimes. He is capable of making good pass at times. Like I remember one pass at the U18. Yeah,
everybody talks about that one pass, Jerome. Do you know why? It was the only one he made in the last 20 games of his season. But you're right, it was a good pass. Yeah. But you're right, that's he doesn't hit weak side options. He doesn't look at the weak side. Doesn't operate with the weak side. That's for sure one of the.
So we think he's more of a winger, probably if everything goes right, more of a third line player. If I look back in the past, we had a few players like that. Joe Veleno, who played in Montreal, was viewed as a top 6 center all year. We ranked him, I believe, 37 on our list. Looking back, maybe it was a bit too low because that draft class has been really bad.
Not the best class, no. But in a typical draft, I think, mid-30s would be the spot.
We project him as he was playing center. We said he's going to be a winger, and he's going to be a depth winger in the NHL at the NHL level, and
that's what he is.
Yeah,
that's what he is.
So, we'll see with Lawrence if we're right or not. But everything we just mentioned to us, I going to the NCAA after Christmas. I don't know if that was a tough one. Yeah, not the right move, and also Boston U was a bit of a mess this year, so not exactly the best situation for him. But yeah, so that's all the reason we mentioned. Those are a bit why we think he's more of a more of a third, fourth line player, winger at the NHL level. I think someone mentioned sometime could he end up being an Alex Newhook type player? And I don't think he skates as well as Newhook, But
handling rates too. The handling rates are not Newhook's. That's one thing I'll suggest with the skill that I think is misrepresented. His handling rates in college were really bad. They were not. This isn't now. He's a prospect. Kids can develop, and occasionally he'll make a high-end play. But I remember looking back at all of the handle rates of JJ Peterka in the DEL, and they weren't good either. But it's the DEL. It's still a decent professional league that's gaining traction. College, it ain't college, right? So it's one of those situations. You expect the hands. The thing with his hands that we need to emphasize is we have to weigh them ridiculously heavily because he doesn't see the ice, like Jerome mentioned. So he's going to be trying to drive play. You better have a frame and handling combination, skating combination to make that happen. I just mentioned he doesn't know how to use his skating correctly. Well, guess his hands, he also has a lot of trouble timing his handling plays. A ton of trouble. So he's going to have to learn. You know, he's going to have to learn to do, Jerome, is be a bit more like Ilya Morozov, who we'll get to, who protects the puck on his backhand a bit more and uses his frame more often. That's going to have to be one of the qualities that Lawrence is going to have to develop in order to actually translate. You mentioned the third line. Like, I think that's best case, personally. I really think that this kid's a fourth liner who teams desperately try to move up a lineup after over scouting. That's kind of how I look at him right now. I could be wrong, of course. I've been wrong many times before. But admittedly, we've had some success with this type of player in the past. We dropped Newhook significantly in his draft year. We saw some of the issues that were going to be apparent in his game. We were right so far about Brad Lambert. We had Lysell too high in our rankings, but we were suspicious throughout the season. I wish we gave ourselves more of our gut instinct on him, to be honest, because we knew Lysell had some operational issues, and there is some overlap with Lysell and how Lysell thinks the game as well with his rush, flash, and dash offense. So, he's going to, like, this is the way that we rank, right? You look at the player, and he hasn't lived up to expectation, but he's an August birthday. He's younger. He did good in the USHL. We factor that in. But at the end of the day, when we're watching him, it's like, how many things does he have to change in order to actually efficiently translate to the NHL? And the answer is basically everything. He has to change functionally how he stays above the puck, off the puck, how he recognizes forechecking trajectories, how he board battles, how he operates in one-on-one situations. His handling rates have to go through the roof. He has to open up the ice. He has to be able to find backdoor options, weak side options. He has to understand better how to manipulate opposing defense so he can slow down the play, allow his F2, F3 options to come in so that he has different options. He has no advanced thinking, and he was honestly incredibly pedestrian on the power play. And that is extremely dangerous. When you give a kid who's supposed to be extremely talented more time and space and they still don't make the right plays, he's still mistiming, and he's still not efficient and effective, that really speaks volumes to us thinking we're in the right direction with this player. This is not a half-wall operator. This is not a flank power play specialist. This isn't Gavin McKenna's situation where at even strength it simply won't matter because McKenna will put up 70 points on a power play. That is not the situation with Tynan Lawrence. He has to be good at even strength in order to dictate, because he is very likely a PP2, maybe power play one. You put him near the net front, maybe. So there's a whole lot of problems here with Lawrence. This isn't us just trying to beat up the kid too, because it gives us a headache. Because we get people coming back to us and be like, what is wrong with you? You got clickbait and all this nonsense. And the reality is, we wish we could keep him up there, because then we don't have to deal with the headache of everybody coming after us thinking something's wrong with our evaluation. We think it's the opposite. We think we have this right, and we think the rest of the industry hasn't assessed him properly, essentially.
Yeah. Okay, let's move on to Alexander Command, who was like the other high-profile players that people questioning. Why is he not in their first round? He is 36 on our list. Honestly, like if the season stopped in early November, he's in our top 32.
He's higher, yeah.
Yeah, we had a lot of times for him at the first, let's say, September, October, early November. But I mean, for me, and I think Brad, you can attest to that. Starting November, I didn't get a single good viewing of Command until the U18s this year.
It's tough, yeah. It's tough.
Yeah. And that's like, I would say 15-ish games. So, every tournament, the Five Nation in November, Junior A Challenge, Five Nation tournament in February, and then, games in G20. Like,
And that's 15 each for everyone, not combined. Jerome and myself have 30 combined viewings of this, maybe 40 combined viewings of this.
like at best he was average, but like often he was below average, and it was a lot of it was like his skill level let him down. You know, transition play where really it was not pretty at time. Lost the puck a lot in the neutral zone. His ends, we just mentioned Lawrence and his ends. Same issue here.
Same issue.
So he's good on the power play. Like a lot, if you look at a lot of his goals, stationary shooter on the power play from the face-off circle. A lot of that. There's some good too. We don't hate the player. He's probably one of the best face-off guy in the draft. I think it was like over 60% in G20. He plays hard.
It's surprising, because the hands, you think the dexterity and the wrist would matter there, and it's still 60% of the shot. It's pretty unbelievable, honestly.
Yeah, and he plays hard, like plays a lot harder than your typical Swede. Like if you just look at the U18, he was playing with Nordmark and Hermansen. Like there's a big difference here in terms of compete level and toughness. So that we like. We think just the upside is a bit limited. When we see him rank in some rankings like top 10, like we're whoa, that's not what we have seen this year. So I still think Command can be a fourth line player, but definitely not too high on my list. So Brad, maybe you want to add something here on Command, but yeah, we him and Lawrence are pretty much in the same range and also in the same boat as far as evaluation goes.
Yeah, there's definitely some overlap. There's some difference. Let's talk about a bit of the differences and what we saw. So one thing for sure that they both share is they basically had Barrett Hayton levels of bad performances. What I mean by that is in Barrett Hayton's draft season, I watched that kid 25 games. I was telling Jerome and Mark, I liked him in 2 performances, 2 out of 25. What are we supposed to do? I can't do anything with that. Right. So I had him low. I was not a huge fan of Barrett Hayton by any stretch. I had him like late 20s, early 30s, kind of a similar thing here. I had to drop him. And then he goes top 5 and I'm, my face, I literally couldn't believe it. In this situation, Command's performances, with the exception of some of the U18, and again, we gotta talk about this U18, Jerome. There's no Belarus. There's no Russia. This is not a strong class. Like we had NHL scouts were talking about this, the lowest skill U18 tournament ever, and then we're hyping up Command because he had a good event. Listen, we got to be very careful when it comes down to these players. Most of it that you hear publicly is based off storylines and trying to make noise. And what scouting is you watch them in league play mostly. You weight the tournaments depending on where they play in their league. For instance, I mentioned JJ Peterka earlier. You got to weight his U20 performance extremely heavily because that's the only time he's playing junior. He's in the men's league. That's where you got to do it different. With Command, we watched him in J20. So we could use that and weigh those performances a lot heavier than some of his international performances, and he was bad. He was not very good in some of those games, and it comes down to exactly what Jerome said. And the overlaps the hands, but there is one difference. I'll give Command this. He understands what he is as a hockey player more than Lawrence. Lawrence doesn't know what he is. Command does. Command knows he's a natural, gritty, determined 200-foot center who go into the gritty areas of the ice, go into the difficult around the net areas, try to make life harder for opposing teams. He'll finish all his checks. Not that Lawrence won't, but he'll do it in a way that makes more sense for his natural center position. Right. Lawrence is just trying to run through players. Command is trying to actually actively, physically engage in a way that makes more sense for him to stay on the inside of the puck and help support his team. So that gives him a bit better defensive opportunity. One thing we didn't mention, Jerome, we probably should with Lawrence, we do not project him as a penalty kill player at all. He's not. There's no chance that the kid's going to play on a penalty kill. Command might. That gives him further value. The other factor, Jerome made a very important point. He has scored a ton in J20, but a lot of it's on the man advantage, and that's because he gets more time and space. More time and space means he gets to load his shot longer. And that's one distinguishing characteristic of this player. It takes him time to load shots. The handling rates aren't there, but he is better at driving on his backhand. he does have a bit more of that Morozov to him, where he understands that he has to operate on unique angles using his frame to protect pucks, where Lawrence is all open space thinking he's got this high skill set that he can use, and it doesn't work at all at this time. So there's a bit more polish, I would suggest, with Command, but I'm 100% agree. I would be shocked if this is not a depth player. But very likely to be a center relative to Lawrence when we project them out. Just for us, not the minimum skill threshold required for top six in any way. And there, honestly, Command might be a third line center if things go really right, but I would bank on both very likely being more like Isaac Lundstrom on Columbus. I bring him up in the book. That's a fourth liner that still plays. Very likely something similar to that.
Yeah. All right. And you mentioned like comment on a power play, like. Mm-hmm. Let's be honest. They had like a really good power play. You know, you have Aram Olsen, who's like a top 32 prospect from us on that team. They also Elofsson on the back end, who I am not a fan, but for junior hockey, he can really do some damage on a power play. So they had a lot of tools offensively. Also, Oscar Olsen, a guy maybe like a dark horse out of Sweden that we like. So yeah, that's gonna do it for Lawrence and Command. Now we're gonna go with two players that we have higher than most, but I would say everybody are two Russians. Surprise, Gleb Pugachyov and Nikita Shcherbakov. To say that we like Pugachyov would be a bit of a understatement. He's maybe one of our favorite player in the class. Why? Because, he might be a Russian Tom Wilson. That's a bit what, Brad, in his profile you wrote. Huge kid. He's nasty. He's physical. I think people underrate his skill level too. I think they just look at his stats line and they don't think he's going to produce much at the NHL level. We think he's got a top 6 upside. Big time playoff performer at the NHL level. That's the projection we make. If you watch the NHL playoff, you just saw Ivan Barbashev in the playoff. That's a similar player, except he's better at the same age and he's 6'4", not 6 feet tall. So those are two differences, but he's going to NHL defensemen are not going to enjoy playing against Pugachyov because he's coming and he's not going to be nice about it. He's going to create some damage, a bit like Tom Wilson does. So we think he's a top six upside player with a very unique physicality that there's not many players like that. So we have a lot of time for Pugachyov. And Brad, you want to mention a few things about him?
Everything. Let's mention everything about this underrated gem. Okay, so what separates Tom Wilson from basically every other power forward is that the second that the opposing team goes over the boards, they are put on notice. They know immediately that they have the highest threat level is on the ice. Right? So much of hockey is mental and it's rhythmic and it's about momentum shifts. If Washington's flat, Tom Wilson makes sure they are no longer flat. And for some people, that's, it's not as valuable as a point, but man, does it ever carry more weight than people think, especially come playoff time. You need players who can absolutely switch the momentum of a game and just terrorize. This kid, Jerome, how many times, we said this all season, there is nobody that hits like this kid. This kid is a freight train, a freak athlete, and he's just getting the party started. He's gonna straight up damage some players. Now, we don't want anybody injured on the ice, but he is remarkably explosive and just a specimen. And there is an instinct when it comes to hitting correctly. A ton of you listen to this. You've been watching NHL hockey for a long time. You know what I'm talking about. Some kids have base instincts to know when to just time hits. This kid knows when to time a hit, and when he hits, it's over. You're just hoping the other player's not injured.
He's like a shark smelling blood on the ice.
He is, yeah. It's true. So the Mako shark, he's just leaves the blood in every direction. He's flying around. The other factor, this is the biggest discrepancy between what we think relative to what I've seen written about him. It seems like everybody was like, oh, yeah, but he's a depth option. He's a depth option. Okay, these same people all have Tynan Lawrence at like top 15. He has better handling rates than Tynan Lawrence. He's bigger than Tynan Lawrence. He has a better playmaking rates than Tynan Lawrence. Now, the shooting, Lawrence is a good shooter. That's for sure the one aspect Lawrence has. Pugachyov is not a bad shooter. In fact, this is kind of strange, but I try to track, there's certain types of players where it's like, okay, Pugachyov isn't a brilliant playmaker, so he's going to have to score for us. So I remember doing about a 200 shot sample. And the shot sample is actually pretty reminiscent of Mackie Samoskevich. And that's kind of sure some of you are like, what are you talking about? Mackie Samoskevich hit the most posts out of any player I've seen in a 200 shot sample in the last 5 years. So his production in the USAHL kind of masked just where he was offensively. I found the same thing with Gleb Pugachyov. In my sample, Gleb Pugachyov hit more posts in the 200 shots than any other prospect that I did that for. So that speaks a bit about his puck luck. Brady Tkachuk. That happened Brady Tkachuk too in college, Jerome. Remember, we were banking on Brady blowing up the U20s, showing his scoring rates going up through there, and then and they did, and that gave us more of a foundational piece to be like, oh, we're right about this. He'd score 40 if he was in the O. That's kind of what I remember Mark Edwards talking about that. If he was on London, he's scoring 40, 45. Nobody's talking about how he's more of a depth player outside the top 5, 10 nonsense, right? Pugachyov reminds me a little bit of that. If Pugachyov put another 7 or 8 goals in the back of the net, which is very possible, I don't think we'd be seeing as many people talking about how he's not talented. The other factor is he is actually capable of some extremely advanced feints despite being an incredible athlete. So usually with athletes, they do attempt that overpowering style. This player has shown sophisticated hip feints, off looks. Command can off look. I've never seen Command do some of the hip feints that Pugachyov has done, trying to peel out of his own zone and find weak side options. And Lawrence, forget about it. I've never seen Lawrence attempt to feint in his life. So it's one of those situations where he has the foundation we look for. He can feint. His playmaking rates held in the KHL. His mechanically speaking, an underrated shot that just had a bit of puck lock issues. This is not so different than Kirill Marchenko as well, who we were extremely high on in 2018. We thought the production was totally masked, that the offense would take off. We got fortunate there. We were right. That's how we kind of evaluate the situation with Pugachyov, because Pugachyov doesn't, unlike Tynan Lawrence, who thinks he doesn't need his team, Pugachyov actually doesn't need his team. And that's just like Tom Wilson. Tom Wilson's like, give me the puck, and we're going to drive, and good luck. And Pugachyov's going to be the same thing. You're not going to stop this kid from getting to the interior portion of the rink and creating havoc. He's a havoc generator. And these players come around very infrequently. And as we look at the psychological makeup of these kids coming up now, we're seeing, the game's getting a bit softer. Kids are getting a bit softer. It's a new generation. When you can get a Russian kid from Chernobyl looking like a mutant on the ice who just kill everyone, that's invaluable. You can't. When you're talking to NHL staffs, one thing I notice with a lot of NHL teams right now, they're really factoring unicorn specialization because it gives you a different makeup in a lineup that you can't really learn to practice against. You can't anticipate it as easily. Pugachyov's that. Pugachyov's a unicorn. He's a freak.
Yeah, and the speed skating combo is pretty impressive.
Pretty darn impressive.
He can really skate, and it's like he's not even. There's a lot of runway here. Like physically, he's listed at 6'3", 200 pounds. Like he might be 220, 225 when he's NHL ready.
6'4", 225, 230.
Yeah.
Ooh,
and he's got the motor. He's a bit of a psychopath on the ice at times. That's a great piece for any team to take in the draft. I'm curious to see where he goes, but I think he'll be pretty close where we have him on our list. Next guy, Nikita Shcherbakov. Central Scouting has him as 6'3". Does not look 6'3" to us. He looks more like 6'4", 6'5". So I'm curious to see how he measures at the Russian camp in Florida coming up. So Brad, we saw a lot of Dmitry Simashev in his draft year. We saw
your favorite defenseman.
Yes,
the Russian defenseman.
Yes, I'm my favorite, maybe the biggest Simashev fan out there. And then we watched a lot of Shcherbakov in the MHL this season because he played mostly in the VHL, but I hate the VHL. I think it's a terrible league to scout.
For scouting, for scouting, it's like there's nightmares out there in the scouting world. Latvian Pro Hockey, the VHL, J18, anything. There's some pain out there. Yeah.
So we value his MHL game a lot more than the VHL, and there was some games that I thought he looked more impressive than Simashev did in his draft year. So that really put at least me on notice. So I'm like, oh, okay, this just the skating alone, like he's a high end skater. Maybe not as probably just a lower level than Simashev, but Simashev like physically was pretty mature physically in his draft year. This is not a mature physically player. He has a lot of he's listed at 187 pounds. There's a lot of potential here for to get stronger. So really impressive MHL viewings with him. He can do about pretty much anything he wants on the ice. Is he going to be a PP1 guy at the NHL level? No, but he does have some skill. His hands are good. He has a better shot than Simashev. He passed the puck better than Simashev too. So it's starting to get really interesting when you compare him to Simashev. Simashev, I think, will defend better, has more physicality than Shcherbakov. Shcherbakov defends well with his stick. Like physically, he's a bit. Some games he does have some physicality, but overall, he's not a mean player. Maybe he knows he has some limitation, physically because he's a bit of a stick. let's call it this way. So maybe he's just trying to figure out what works, what doesn't work for him right now. But long term, when we think he's maybe 210 pounds, 215 pounds, maybe the physicality will be a little bit better. If you look at projection-wise, you just watch the Hurricanes win the Cup with K'Andre Miller, Jacob Slavin. We think defense will probably be more of his calling card at the NHL level. He still can make play offensively. He can still move pucks. He can still skate with the puck and get himself out of trouble. But we think defensively, with his mobility and his stick, we'll not be surprised if the Hurricanes actually would draft him.
Take a look.
Yeah. So yeah, very interesting prospect out of Russia with Shcherbakov. So Brad, what was your take on him this season?
Well, to your point, we watched Simashev so closely, and you're right. Like there's some overlap there. The size, the frame, the skating's very good. Though Simashev better with the same. Simashev's the better athlete. Yeah, I would say.
Yeah.
But then you look at the offensive, the secondary offense there, and that's where Shcherbakov catches back up. There are flashes that Simashev simply didn't have. Simashev had the handling ability. The ability to make some very interesting dynamic sequences at times because of that, but didn't have the offensive instincts to go past that first wave of defense. Didn't know how to set up backside, weak side options. Didn't know how to slow down or find his teammates with advanced plays in transition. Where this kid, he does. Shcherbakov, he has some performance. Even the VHL drum. You got to admit, the VHL once or twice he had some.
He scored a hat trick.
He had a hat trick. He did have a hat trick where it came together for him. And you look at him, you're like, this isn't so far off Malte Gustafsson. This is not that different to Malte Gustafsson. There's some overlap there too. Like Gustafsson, minute eater, projects to be extremely good defensively. He's got the wingspan, the skating. He's structured, very good retrieval rates. He can exit both of the skating, playmaking, and he has some good hands, soft hands, like surprisingly soft hands for their size at their age. But the offense is secondary. Right. That's where so the question is, how much of it is secondary? And I'll be honest with all of you, we don't really know. The growth rate is ludicrously high. You have to project him much further out than some of these other kids because of it. And because he was in the VHL instead of the MHL, it made our life so much more difficult. One thing I will say, though, his MHL viewings, I thought he looked legitimately projectable top 10, much like Gustafsson. I really thought that there was some neck and neck overlap there. In the VHL, that's where things get more murky, get more frustrated. So we pulled him back a bit. But, one thing I think you should say about Shcherbakov is that he is smarter than Smits. Even offensively speaking, he is smarter than Smits. I think Albert Smits, that I don't know if we'll talk about him in another sequence. Well, we will talk about him in another video, so won't go too much detail there. But Smits is not offensively a very intelligent player. That's where I think a lot of people have misinterpreted Smits. Shcherbakov actually shows like quite a bit of interesting base instincts that could be molded correctly. You might get more than people think. So obviously there's the Russian factor. Scouts in the NHL having to deal with the same thing we are, which is they don't have to deal with the VHL, and that's a nightmare. But this kid is extremely underrated. There's a ton of runway here.
Yeah, and we can say he did start the year in the KHL, but he was not playing like that many minutes. Yeah, so I was hoping he would get some KHL games by the end of the year, maybe playoff, a bit like Zarowski did last year with.
Yeah, that helped. We needed though. That helped.
Yeah,
that helped because it showed immediately the translation was going to hold. Yeah. It's like, can he actually translate this incredibly unique attacking style of offense? And he didn't just translate it; he like dictated. And I was like, what? Then that's when we knew, right? So those viewings can help.
We didn't get many shifts in the playoff, Zarowski, but every shift he had was like, whoa, you were like noticing. So that was probably like what sold us on him as a top 25 pick, and looking back, it was a bit too low. So all right, let's finish. We got 3 more players. I think we're gonna wrap up this video. 3 guys that have been ranked pretty high on the list, and not so much for us. So let's start with we just mentioned 2 Russians. So Igor Shilov, another Russian who plays in the queue. My goodness, he's been ranked in first round in a lot of places this year. Never close for us. I have no time for this player. Yes, he's talented. Yes, he can shoot a puck. Yes, he can. He's a really good playmaker, but you need more than that for the NHL for me. And his pace, he's probably one of the worst pace player in this class. His effort level, not good. Skating, athletic ability, below average for me. So he was probably my most confused player that I scout this year, in a sense that I see his name ranked in top 32 all year, and I'm like, I don't know what people are watching. I'm really wrong, or maybe we're right about this one. I'm pretty sure we're right. So yeah, that was interesting to me, and I like I mentioned, I saw his name in the top 32. It's funny, at the end of the season, some people like save their butt a bit and start dropping him.
Dropped him
like
a lot.
Yeah, I saw his name drop from the top 32 to like past 100. So that's a bit of a fraud to me. So yeah, I don't have much time for Shilov. The best story of the year for me for Shilov, I was watching him at the start of the year, and I was complaining to Brad how much I'm not a fan of this player. And then Brad watched one game. He's like, I know why you don't like him. I'm like, because he looks like Joshua Watt, which was another player I had no time for. So I was like, oh, it makes perfect sense. Maybe like a standard version of Joshua Watt, who has still not made it to the NHL. So yeah. Sheila, Brad, you want to add something on the Victoriaville forward?
Yeah, just I'll parallel him a little bit with Arthur Kaliev. Kaliev had an excellent skill set, tremendous amount of production, and off the puck, it was real bad. It was not translatable in any capacity. In his draft year, I had Kaliev in like the 4th round. I had 0. Like, I really did not believe. The modern game, like we just watched the play. Everybody's watched the playoffs. Look at the 2 teams that made the playoff final. Look how hard their forechecking is. Look how the pace of the play was crazy. Carolina was the pace they kept. What's Shilov going to do with that pace? He's going to drown. He's going to drown. That's how. Now, he has enough talent and intelligence to make us look really bad if things go really right here. But it takes an entire recalibration. The mental switch has to be flipped on. That light bulb's got to turn on real quick. Our rule now at Hockey Prospect is we've seen just too damn many of these players. Too many Arthur Kalievs and Oscar Olausens and Ryan Suzuki's. That's the right way. Yeah, that's the brother I'm talking about. They all had the same issue. Extreme talents. And sometimes when you're an extreme talent, you never learn how to do the other things because you get away with that talent. That's how he plays. And Jerome's point, Jerome was lowest on Nick Waugh. And it got scary there for a little bit.
Not Nick, Joshua Waugh.
I'm sorry, other Waugh. It got scary for you a little bit there. There was a time where like, oh, he might be actually pulling this off. And admittedly, if he did, Jerome, we maybe have to reevaluate how Shilov would look a little bit. But it's not looking like we have to reevaluate that. And until we do, we don't have to worry about it. And that's why Shilov's as low as he is.
Yeah, so I'm actually curious to see where he goes in the draft and which team picks him. That's going to be interesting for me. One of my reason to be really low on him was I'm like, even if he makes it to the NHL, am I gonna want him on my team? Probably not. Unless like the compete level goes from it's 2 times better, which it's not a thing. It's never happened. I don't see why I would want this type of player on my team. So even he might go in the second round. Maybe a team is that crazy they pick him in the first round. I don't know, but he's just not a hockey prospect.com player. We don't care about those type of player. Next one, Marcus Nordmark. My goodness, he gave us a few nightmare this season. Talented, definitely talent-wise, he should be top 32. But there's a lot of here that I'll just say is U18 because I thought he was pretty soft all year long playing in G20, even internationally with Sweden. Like he kind of pissed me off how soft he was, and sometimes he would like quit on plays, refuse to get it. Just some sequence that would just like blow my mind this year, like watching him play. But then, like he's a talented player. Like he had like really good showing at the Olympia tournament, maybe before the final. But that kid's talented, so that's the thing that is a bit scary. I'm more scared about him, let's say, than Shilov, to come back to hurt us. Because I did mention, like, I thought he was pretty soft with the national team, his G20 team, and then he goes to the SHL at the end of the year, and then he played physical, and the compete looked better in those games. I remember you and I were watching those games, Brad, and we were like, wow, okay, we didn't really expect this. And then he goes to the U18, and then it's back to the old version. Yeah. Like the lack of compete. He took so many bad penalties in that tournament. I was like, I can't do it. I can't rank this guy high on my list. So he's way down on our list, like 4th, 5th round value basically at this point. So he's definitely gonna go higher than where we have him. So that's a bit of my quick take on Nordmark. Brad, I'll let you say a few things here about him.
Yeah, I think there's a lot of overlap with Wozniak. Wozniak, hyped coming in the season, tremendously skilled, lots of talent, lots of runway, and then you watch him play, and you're like, oh my God, this kid doesn't get it. Like you see him on the ice, and he does not know how to compete. He does not know how to keep up with the pace of play. There was no player that was more maddening to me in terms of the amount of ice he would just give up when he could just take it and get into high danger situations in that player. There is some overlap here with Nordmark. One of the most interesting aspects of both, the only time we ever saw Wozniak compete, and the only time I ever gave pause to him was when he first came up the SHL. He actually drove, leaned on players, played weighted minutes occasionally, which shocked me to my core, tried to forecheck, tried to actually hold physically, and ramped up his pace. I was like, this could translate. It's just how much of that is from him getting an opportunity to experience pro hockey for the first time. How much of that is him just getting over amplified, knowing that he's trying to stay up and prove himself in the lineup? Because when he knows he gets to play, he's terrible off the puck. That was the exact same thing with Nordmark. Nordmark was actually pretty competitive in the SHL. Then he gets right back to what we've seen all season. And it's a shame because he's a brilliant playmaker. He's a technician. He's an incredibly dangerous on man advantage. He has all sorts of natural gifts and talent for being able to play in the top six theoretically in the NHL. But then he doesn't get it on the ice. I mean, I read an article at The Athletic, and it was like it was about who are the most underrated prospects, and they were all evaluating each other. Marcus Nordmark said his own name. And that sums up everything. Honestly, it sums up everything. So yeah, I don't. We're not as worried about again, Shilov, Nordmark. These players, if they don't bring it off the puck, and there's question marks the entire length of the season. Usually we get these types of players more right than wrong. And look at public lists. Almost all public lists has these kids bumped up in the top 32 all year, and then where they ran at the end of the year? They're watch them with the U18, and they jump ship, right? So they came back on board in the direction we already were.
Yeah. All right. Let's finish with Mattis Preston. Another guy we have much lower than the public list that we have seen. By the way, I need to mention this. Has anyone seen him, like his face? What? He looks exactly like Gavin McKenna. Like they look like twin brothers.
They look like brothers. It's crazy. Actually,
it's freaking me out sometimes. But anyway, not a hockey prospect type player. He's talented, but I like his playmaking. Like that's his playmaking is his ends. And Brad, you might want to mention something about his ends and how a lot of his digs are going outside, not inside. You can mention that when you talk about him. But yeah, he has good hands, but he doesn't use them efficiently. I could say it this way. But yeah, I like his playmaking. But the rest of his game, I'm not like too crazy. I was expecting a much better goal scorer. Like he has a lot of it's a good shot, but he's not it doesn't translate to goals by him. Like so, I wouldn't say he's Joseph Valeno as far as shooting always in the logo, but there's a bit of that in the way he shoots the puck. He's not a natural finisher that I was expecting at the start of the year, even watching him last year too. So he's really raw physically. I don't know how much he's going to look like a hockey player when it's all said and done in his early 20s. And he doesn't play inside. That's another thing. Like he stays on the outside a lot. Honestly, it's kind of similar to McKenna, to be honest. Like he stays on the outside a lot. He trusts his skill level, but we feel like his skill level is a bit overrated. So he's a boom bust type prospect in this class. Either it's gonna work and we're gonna look bad, or he's just not gonna. Like I don't see him finding a role on a fourth line, even third line. I don't think so. He's either gonna be like a really good top six forward, or he might just end up playing in the Swiss league. So that's a bit of my quick take on Preston.
Yeah, there's the only way I could see a third line is if a team thinks that the way he operates he is a unique and distinct and dynamic rush attacker, and the way he shoots a puck, it's very similar to me, Jerome, with Daniel Sprong and Oliver Moore. Those two players specifically, there's a bit of overlap there where they have a ton of speed, they have a ton of skill, but they're reliant on, I call them trick shooters, where they're looking for off-angle and lower percentage angles purposely to try to catch a goalie off guard when they're not integrated correctly into their posts or when they're cheating. Usually the best determining factor with trick shooters that make it is their seam identification on goalies and their mechanics being ludicrously good. Like Daniel Sprong's shooting mechanics are preposterous. So it allowed him to translate for a couple of seasons there. Mathis Preston might be able to pull off the same type of thing on a third line, maybe. But I'm with you that the top six are boom or bust type of situation is mainly what we're dealing with Mathis Preston. I find this player specifically, he's the player type that's the most susceptible publicly to being overvalued. It's because the highlight reels are very real. He is extremely gifted. He's very, very naturally talented. Hands are fantastic. In terms of just raw coordination, multi-touch handling, it's there. The problem, as Jerome talked about earlier, I did a 200 deke sample. Ironically, the only players in the draft I did a 200 deke sample for were him and McKenna, and it turns out they're identical twins in terms of how they look. So there's some overlap there, but their handling rates are very different, even though they're both very gifted. With Preston, his issue is that when you're talking about a smaller forward, really what you're trying to do is go from the outside to the inside to give yourself the highest probability of scoring, right? You really want to change the percentages into your favor so you can take advantage of your shooting mechanic. Preston does the opposite of that. Preston is constantly putting himself back to the outside with his handling execution. Now, don't get me wrong. There's times where you want a kid to go back to the outside, but it's when you want to see speed differentials to offset defense so you can peel past them when you're smaller. So, for instance, Victor Arvidsson in his prime. Nashville prime Arvidsson, one of the best in the world at pretending to fake his shot and then immediately doing between the legs drag back to the outside. Then he would peel and immediately cut past the pressure. Preston hasn't learned to do things like that yet. His mechanical rates aren't there. He has not learned to use his multi-touch handling around triangles to be able to reverse the pivoting base of a defenseman and force weight transfers against them that then give him better an opportunity in terms of timing his shot around the defense. He doesn't know how to time his shot around triangles correctly at all. Doesn't know how to cut inside. Does not know how to cut through hands at all. That's something. Now, when you're smaller, that's more difficult. He ain't Mikko Rantanen. Right? He's not 6'4", 220 and a horse coming out of the womb. So he has to learn to use his smaller frame, much like Viggo Bjork does, to leverage his mechanics so that he can he can use them functionally better than he does. So basically, offensively, he has a tremendous amount of gifts. He has no idea how to put it together at this stage, and his curve stayed flat. He never really showcased in any capacity by the end of the season. I felt that he could. Yeah, don't worry. U18. Listen, again, we're talking about the worst U18s ever. Right? People are going to overinflate this tournament. It's the last tournament of the year. Historically, it's mattered a bit more than it does this year. We don't weight that tournament heavily at all. We're talking about league play primarily here, so that has to be factored in. Off the puck, completely in his infancy, but I will give him this. Occasionally, he'll just run at players and hip check them into the boards and actually like legitimately throw his weight around in a way you did not expect him to do it. And if he can learn to do that at a better rate and be smarter off the puck with his timing, that's another huge thing with him, Jerome. I'm not going to remember his name, but there's a small Swede back in, I think it was the 2019 class that we had no time for. Tons of good production internationally. Tiny, small player is 5'8". Played in HV. I'll never remember his name though. But
Zion Nybeck.
Thank you. This is why I have Jerome. Jerome's my memory bank here. Zion Nybeck shares this with him, and that's that people misinterpreted his offensive production because of how HV system worked. They were willing to let him cherry pick. They were willing to let him take advantage of getting behind the D while blowing his own coverage. That's Preston's issue too. There's a junior tendency there where Preston doesn't mind cherry picking all day. It's just not going to be able to translate. The one area I will give him full translation marks though, zone entry rates per 60 are going to be through the roof. If you give the kid the puck, he'll be able to find a way to get it past the offensive blue line. As you mentioned, Jerome, pretty good playmaker. So that's one distinguishing quality where he absolutely translates because he can really fly. He can handle a puck at full speed, not around defensemen well, but in motion, in space, he can absolutely handle a puck in full speed and gain the line. That is where he translates. The rest is in its infancy. So there's just too many variables by the end of the season to really consider moving him too high up. But admittedly, from a talent perspective, like, man, is he ever talented? So fair if he pulls it off, it's one of those situations where like, well, the skill was there.
Yeah, I mean, there's a lot of junior hockey in him, right? So he's very immature as a player. He switched teams this year, went from he's now in Vancouver. Unfortunately, he got hurt as pretty much in his second or third game there. So, but anyway, that's gonna wrap up this video, guys. So thanks for watching. Hopefully, we answer some of your question about those specific players. Mostly, I would say we had a lot of question about Lawrence and Command. So hopefully that answer some of it. And if you still don't agree with us, well, that's fine too. uh, we'll talk about it back in 5 years, see if we're right or not. So stay tuned. We're gonna have more video coming up. So make sure to subscribe to Hockey Prospects on YouTube, so to not miss any videos. But until draft day, we're gonna publish like quite a few videos, and we have also a live show the night of the draft, so the first round. So stay tuned for that, and hopefully you can join us for the draft. The only good thing about doing a live show, Brad, is that we don't have to watch the draft. And
That's true. Actually, it was awesome last year. Really had a good time. If any of you listen to this, haven't had an opportunity to see last year's, like check that out. And honestly, like we'll give you a pretty detailed assessment on the fly here of what we think, and depending on which prospect goes to which team. So just stay tuned for it.
Okay, so we'll talk to you guys soon.